There has been rampant speculation surrounding Lucasfilm and, in fact, the Walt Disney Company in terms of what in the world is going to happen with Kathleen Kennedy in this studio that cannot succeed in producing content that consumers want to watch. Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny has been a historic failure. The various Star Wars shows on Disney Plus have had declining viewership. In the last quarter, before the most recent one we've had, we watched as The Mandalorian Season 3 debuted, and Disney Plus subsequently lost hundreds of thousands of subscribers in North America. Now Bob Iger says that he is getting directly involved with the studios and that he is disappointed with the box office. Is it time now, finally, that Kathleen Kennedy will step aside? And have we been given an accurate tip for exactly when that might finally now occur? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video of excellence here on the WDW Pro channel. What a joy it is that you have elected to join us. Joining us to talk about this latest rumor, this latest perhaps scoop regarding Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, Star Wars, and more, your fan favorite out there, Lauren Connor of ThatParkPlace.com returns to lead us through all of this. Lauren, it's a great pleasure to have you return.
Good to be with you, sir.
Lauren, we were talking before we went live on this video. You and I were chatting about how in the world we're going to do this because we have information from sources, and unlike usual, we really can't talk much about them. We know that they probably indicate something significant, and yet we haven't been given permission per se to talk about why we think these things. So folks, essentially what we're saying here is that Lauren and I don't think that Lauren is a very deceptive fellow, and you know, I have tried to have a solid track record when it comes to producing these things, but he and I are aware of what it is we think is happening in terms of what we've been given. Others that you know of in our orbit are aware, but we really can't produce that to you. So we're at the very edge here of rumor and speculation. So please take everything we talk about today with a little extra dose of salt, and let's get into this. Of course, we cannot verify this. It's not yet, it's not yet reality. But let me set the stage. So we have been reporting now for months that we believe that Kathleen Kennedy's contract renegotiations would occur in the third week of August. Well, that's tomorrow, is the third week of August. So we don't know what day that might begin, but we anticipate that that's probably going to happen. However, a few weeks ago, we received word that those contract negotiations had transitioned. And again, we can't prove this, but we have been told that those are now severance negotiations. So we've been tracking that. Then there was the news last week that Kathleen Kennedy and her husband, Frank Marshall, are selling their home that is closest to the Disney headquarters. That's interesting. We've also noticed that over the last month and a half, Lucasfilm has essentially went dead silent. They are on communications lockdown. Yes, we got the Ahsoka trailer that was probably planned out months ahead of time by Disney marketing. And yes, we have seen some books be released, but there are no interviews happening with executives at Lucasfilm. There are no defenses or justifications for what happened with Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny, and everything is crickets over at Lucasfilm. Now we have two different sources telling us two different things, although leaning in the exact same direction. And here's the big headline, folks. You saw it if you clicked on this video. We believe that the announcement that Kathleen Kennedy is retiring could happen as soon as this October. We have our reasons for believing that. We can't really discuss them. We don't want to jeopardize a source. And, well, we don't have permission yet to talk about exactly why we believe that to be the case. But, Lauren, one of the reasons that I think this makes a lot of sense in terms of the announcement is it would give her a 1 year time to exit and receive all of the accolades and awards that she could possibly ever handle. It's just before we begin the awards season, by the way, in Hollywood, so she can get her lifetime achievements, her Oscars, and all of that sort of thing. And then on top of all of that, we also believe that if this announcement were to happen in say, October, that would also indicate that somebody has been selected to transition into the role once she exits. Now, her contract does not end, we don't believe, until October 2024. Although, they could wrap that up sooner. But Lauren, one of the things that has become, I guess, the common refrain is people no longer care. And they no longer care because Kathleen Kennedy has killed Lucasfilm. She's killed Star Wars. She's killed Indiana Jones. She's killed Willow. She killed everything. And so we are now in the apathy stage. And folks out there are like, well, I've heard this 1,000 times that Kathleen Kennedy will leave, and I don't care anymore. So, Lauren, walk me through real quick. Um, what might change if she leaves, if this is true? Anything at all?
Probably not in the near term, is my guess. Um, it's kind of an interesting situation because I think we're all sick to death of talking about this. I don't think any of us really
Amen.
want to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy anymore or the struggles that Lucasfilm has gone through. But as a theoretical exercise, let's say for the sake of argument that for whatever reason we did get an announcement that Kathleen Kennedy is leaving. That means that they at least have a tentative idea of where they're going next in terms of leadership. And so the first thing that I would be thinking about is you want one of two things. You either want a charismatic leader who's going to be public and talking to the fan base and trying to rehabilitate the image of Lucasfilm and the products that they produce, or you want somebody that is not going to talk to the press at all and just do the work behind the scenes and hopefully not put their foot in their mouth and instead just let the company operate, guide it, get the resources that they need, hopefully get back to some kind of quality storytelling, and let the results speak for themselves. So, if I were looking at this, I think what I would want to be paying attention to is, do you see people that are in Lucasfilm's orbit, people that have worked with them as producers, directors, whatever, people with business backgrounds that have been involved in projects before? Are they suddenly making visits to Disney or the Lucasfilm studios or in that orbit? That might give you an indication of who they're thinking, if we can get that kind of information. Um, Regardless, if there is some type of an announcement that's made in the near term, I would expect them to announce that. They're probably going to want the focus to be on Kathleen so that they can give her that year-long sort of a victory walk that they want to manufacture for her. And I would guess everything else is going to be silent because they're going to have to figure out, what do we do? And I don't think there are any easy answers to that question. If they're smart, they'll keep their mouths shut and hopefully build a little bit of anticipation for when they do make an announcement. I do think they'll have to do something to. They're not going to come out and apologize for what's come before, but if they could give us a little bit of hope without trying to oversell something that doesn't exist yet, I think it would at least give them a chance to succeed.
And I do think, Lauren, that this writer's strike, this Hollywood strike, essentially is having an impact because Lucasfilm is just sitting there right now. I mean, she really can't do damage. So, folks out there, if the announcement comes in November or December, we're trying to give you the best information we can as it's happening. We don't control the writer's strike. We don't control the Hollywood strike. And I have never, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, said that Kathleen Kennedy is going to retire until just a few months ago. And that's when things began to change in terms of the sources coming to me. But Lauren, one of the things that I find fascinating in terms of realizing that Lucasfilm, there's something going on. I mean, there just flat out is something big going on. You know, yes, I understand that there's a strike, and so you don't expect some of the actors or writers to be talking to the press and building up these series. But let's just look at Ahsoka, for example. When it comes to Ahsoka, they knew that they were going to go into a writer's strike back when this was happening. They also knew when Ahsoka was going to come out. And so the typical way that a company handles this is that they take, let's say, Dave Filoni, and they go ahead and have him do interviews before the strike begins so that then those interviews can come out, and bolster it and build it up in the press and make sure that it's in the public eye. I haven't seen anything. There is literally nothing being released. And I was reading an article, and they're really stretching at this point, but I was reading an article about the Ahsoka series, and it was talking about how the um the I guess the idea for her demeanor in this show is trying to replicate that of Gandalf, right? She's going from uh, Ahsoka the Gray to Ahsoka the White, and it's still like as I read that, I realize that nobody cares. Lauren, is this perhaps a Kathleen Kennedy or Lucasfilm moment where not only is it Ahsoka going from gray to white, but maybe Lucasfilm could have the opportunity to make a big change here, or are we stuck?
I, this is just pure speculation on my part. I feel like Lucasfilm is kind of holding its breath about Ahsoka. I think had Ahsoka come out a year ago, 2 years ago, it would have had a much better chance at success. I think they're still hoping this is going to hit. I think that they really want it to hit. They have a need for something to hit. I think
Badly.
that they're making a pretty big gamble by doing live action Thrawn. And that is ultimately what the fan base, I think, wants. But they want a Thrawn that's authentic to the original Thrawn that was created in the Timothy Zahn novels. And if you screw that up, you're in real big trouble. So I think they're kind of walking on a razor's edge. They don't want to over promote it because they've had some they get a little too big for their britches with things like Obi-Wan, and they really went to the advertisers and said, look, this is going to be an instant classic. It's going to make you all of this money. You really want to have all your ad spots on here, and then it just didn't do well. So I think they're wary of that. If it does well, if it actually does gain an audience and people like it, then they're going to capitalize on that all they can. That gives them something they can latch onto and tout as a success. Um, Ahsoka, unfortunately, the situation they're in now, she is a character that when she first appeared in the Clone Wars was not liked. And that was, I suspect, deliberate. They wanted to give her an arc, and they did a very good job of giving her an arc. But Dave Filoni, I think, has perhaps pushed this character a bit too far. She is beloved, and they have given her all kinds of epic story points that point to that Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. When Ahsoka was apparently killed off in her battle with Vader during Rebels, Dave Filoni had done this sketch that showed Gandalf speaking to Ahsoka saying, "Don't worry, they thought I was dead too." And then at the climax of Rebels, you saw her in white garb with a staff. So he's echoing those story beats. But she also runs the danger of becoming too haughty. They have tied her to the daughter from the Mortis Gods arc. They have pointed her as being potentially an avenue through which a new Jedi Order could rise because she was wise enough to split from the original corrupt Jedi Order. You're edging into that Mary Sue territory, and also with Dave Filoni's love of his own characters, it's beginning to grate on the audience. And
Lauren,
that's where I think
do you think they're trying to send Ahsoka into the Rey movie? Is this what this is? A build up to that point?
I think there's certainly a possibility. You've already had Ahsoka appear with Luke, which I think was something that the fan base actually probably kind of wanted, because from there you have her tied to Anakin, and that gives her the ability to talk to him about his father, which I think a lot of people would like to see. People are excited to see Hayden reprise the role as a Force spirit, and so I think there are ways that you could capitalize on that. The danger, though, is that I think that Filoni's characters are being moved front and center. And if you like those characters, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're placing them into a story that is supposed to be a canon version of the novels with Thrawn, and they are replacing the original characters, there's going to be a backlash to that. And we've seen enough of that kind of thing happen. That's what I would call fictional Star Wars stolen valor stuff, that it's like sandpaper on the skin. And I think that's why they've got to be a little bit wary about this series. If they do pull it off, if they somehow manage to tell a good story that surprises people and that it looks good, it sounds good, and it works, they'll capitalize on it. But if they don't, boy, howdy, do they need to figure out what do we do now? Because we have burned every bridge there is. I would argue they're already there.
I
I
think
think
they've
they're
burned the
already there.
bridge. I think if Ahsoka does poorly, it's like they're finding the timbers down in the river and pulling them up to set them on fire. I
Yeah,
mean, we're really
yeah.
at that point. But so, Lauren, one of the fascinating things about this is, we will not know we'll have some idea based on, just the episodes. We'll be watching them. I'll probably be giving reviews of them. I would love to have you be a part of that. We'll see. Um, but we won't know the ratings for Ahsoka until probably late September. And so, that's going to get us right up into that October timeframe, of course. Um, but I'm looking at Secret Invasion. If this thing can't beat Secret Invasion, then it'll mean that Star Wars is dead. I mean, that because Secret Invasion is dead. And by the
Well,
way, we've got a huge scoop coming out on Marvel Monday morning that I hope we don't get beat to, but yeah, you had a thought there.
one of the things I feel bad about is that if Ahsoka doesn't work, if it crashes and burns like so much else has, the person
Mhm.
I'm going to feel the worst for, well, actually, I'm going to say two people. I'm going to feel bad for Lars Mikkelsen because I actually think
Yep.
that his interpretation, at least his voice for Thrawn, is excellent, and I was very pleased to hear that they cast him. If they misuse him, if they tell this story incorrectly, what a shame, because this could be the role of a lifetime for a person. And if it's not received well, it's done. The other person is Rosario Dawson.
Yes, absolutely.
I like her. I think she's a fan of the character, and I think that she's done a great job portraying her. And so that's it's just going to be a shame all the way around if this follows the pattern of all of the recent Star Wars stories. It's just I for for the fan base, I'm hoping for the best, but I'm not expecting much.
All right. So let me ask you a hard question then. We think, whether or not this rumor comes to pass, and we're way out on a limb, doing this, but folks, one of the reasons we're doing it is because we would hate for our sources' stuff to be confirmed on Monday by a trade like Variety or Deadline or whatever, and suddenly they've got the story, and we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs like, well, we had that. That's why we're doing this, but we're way out on a limb. But Lauren, the hard question is Kathleen Kennedy, we think she's at the end of her career at Lucasfilm. Is there anything positive that we can say as she exits Lucasfilm? Is there any good that she did for Star Wars? Or is this just a pile of rubble?
Well, that is a hard question because I do think there are some very small things of value that have been contributed in the Disney canon. I've said before that I'm not as against the solo film as I think a lot of people are. I understand it's a bad movie. It's certainly not everyone's cup of tea. I understand if you don't accept it. So let me give those caveats to start with. I personally liked it.
I thought
I
the
think
casting was terrible. That's
I
what that one of the big issues I had.
I didn't have an issue with Alden Ehrenreich, and I know I'm going to go against the grain with a lot of people on this. There's a couple of scenes in that movie where I think he did channel Harrison, and I don't think at that point in his career that he's supposed to be the Han Solo we know. I think that's what we were supposed to get in the sequels, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not going
Right,
to
right.
get into litigating that movie. I liked Rogue One. I think Rogue One
Yes,
is
yeah.
an excellent movie.
Okay, that is
Um,
okay, Lauren. That's a great point. That's a Kathleen Kennedy project, and fair enough. I think that's a good movie.
I like the Andor series. Now, I think the Andor series had a painfully slow start. I think that they definitely needed to edit it down and speed it up, but once it got rolling, it never stopped. There's a couple other things that they did in the Disney canon that I do like. For one thing, I think they made the Empire much scarier than it had been in the old EU. They made it far more powerful and far more omnipresent. And I think that that actually works to their benefit. You want to have a big, scary enemy, and the Empire is that in the Disney canon. One other thing that they did that was a kind of a minor change, but I liked it because I thought it was in character for the Emperor, was they made the Imperial Palace the former Jedi Temple. He moved in and he renovated it, and I thought, well, that's exactly what a spider like him would do. And so that's a minor thing, but I thought that's a smart move on their part because of course he's going to want to sit in the seat of where the Jedi's power was just to rub their nose in it. So there are small things, um, but overall, if you're asking what do they do now, it's a hard row to hoe. I think the major issue that they have um, is that Lucasfilm was founded to service the vision of the visionary himself. It was George Lucas wanting to be unfettered by studio control. He had a vision for what he wanted, and it was his vision that was going to be on the screen. What Disney has done is made stories by committee. And that's never, ever going to work. You need a visionary who's familiar with the material, knows what makes it work, and that's everything they don't want. They don't want a fanboy. They want somebody that's going to come in and do something different to put their stamp on it, when what they need to be doing is respecting the original creation, because that's what got them the fan base and the cachet that they had.
Well, so let me ask you one final question, and I think it's important because if someone comes in to take over for Kathleen Kennedy, and we suspect that would happen next year, who knows? It could happen faster, but I don't think so. But if somebody comes in to take Kathleen Kennedy's place next year, what do you tell them to do, Lorne, with what has happened under Kathleen Kennedy's watch? How much of it needs to be scrubbed? How much of it needs to be retconned? How much of it can you keep, and how much just needs to be, denounced publicly and thrown away?
I think there's very little that you can keep. And that's the real tragedy of this whole thing. Because there are some bits that I think were good. I love the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. I love Andor. I would like to keep that stuff. I'm not sure you can. You couldn't keep just the first two seasons of The Mandalorian and scrap the third, for instance. So
Right.
that's a problem. And the farther out you get, the worse it gets.
Okay, so
Uh,
explain though, Lauren, for those out there who might not understand why we're saying that you'd have to scrap these. Most studios just ignore their lackluster stuff. Why would you have to scrap these?
Well, I think a big part of the backlash to the sequels, for instance, is the fact that they retroactively made the prequels and the original trilogy worse. And so
Yes.
you can't really keep that stuff without it tarnishing what came before. They strayed enough from the vision and tried to steal the glory of the previous characters and made all the original characters failures, that if you want to resuscitate this brand, you have to restore their reputation. And that means you have to excise a lot of stuff. The closer that you can stay to Return of the Jedi, to that time frame, nearer to the Return of the Jedi, the better off you'll be. Um, I'm not sure that you would necessarily have to get rid of Rebels, for instance. I think Rebels could probably remain. I think that gosh, it's hard when trying to think of all of it. I think the Jedi series of computer games, they might be able to stay. Now they do have some
Rogue One
ties
can
to.
stay.
I believe Rogue One could stay. The issue with Jedi Survivor is that it does have ties to the High Republic, but I haven't played it, so I don't know how extensive those ties are, and I don't know if it's something that is so minor that you could just kind of ignore it, or if it's actually significant in a way that would require that other material to remain as well. So those kind of questions are difficult to answer. Um, but I do think that there's an awful lot that you would have to absolutely jettison, the sequel trilogy being most of it.
And there's no way
I
to retcon that in your mind. There's no way
no.
to make that tenable
Yeah,
with the originals.
there are ways that you could attempt to do so, but I think that the wounds have festered so badly at this point that you're better off just lopping off the limb. It's if you try and retcon this, it, like I said, I think there are ways to do it, but I think you're always going to have people sore about it if you do so. If you really want to rehabilitate the brand, you just have to say in some more diplomatic way than what I'm going to say it. But you're going to have to say, look, we made a mistake. This was not the right direction to go. We apologize. We're now going to try and bake a cake that you will want to eat. And I think that that's at a bare minimum what they have to do.
Before they had to shutter the hotel, maybe that would have been a hard argument to hear. Maybe people would have said, "Oh, come on, Lauren, you're going too far." But I think we're there now. They can't keep the hotel open for 100, guest rooms at the Disney World Resort. Um, we haven't seen success on Disney Plus. The High Republic has been an utter failure. We've essentially seen the units pushed to retailers on the latest pieces they put out there, and it's very low. It's around 60,000. That's insufficient. So
Well,
there's nothing working.
look, I think a mistake that I think a lot of these storytellers are making is that they think that you just have to keep going bigger and bigger. And that's what they tried to do with the sequel trilogy. It's like they even made a joke about it with Starkiller Base. It's like, okay, it's big. It's a bigger Death Star. At the end of The Rise of Skywalker, when you had every ship that ever appeared in a Star Wars
Oh,
thing in the
so
final
bad.
fleet battle, it's
Like
so
they dumped
big
out the toy chest.
you get numb to it,
Yep.
and you can't just keep raising the stakes. I would advise whoever it is that comes in, if they really want to turn the ship around, go smaller. Tell a small story, tell a personal story. This is actually why I think that if I were in charge, I'd want to see an X-Wing TV series, not movies. Start with a TV series, and I know that that's probably going to be difficult for them to swallow because I don't know how they would monetize it, but it allows you to go with some new characters. I would choose the ones from the novels, but even if you're not going to do that, you have at least a dozen new characters that you can tell different stories with in an anthology kind of way, having missions of the week and some limited story arcs that allow you to explore what does the galaxy look like after Return of the Jedi without having it affect the entire galaxy. And because these characters are new, it also means you don't know what's going to happen with them. They could die this week. There are actual stakes involved. And I think when people get invested, it's not because there's 40,000 different ships on the screen. It's because they care about the characters in the cockpit. And so they need to get back to that.
I fully agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, whoever takes over at the helm of Lucasfilm, they're going to have to deal with the Acolyte. And we know that's probably going to have to come out because the longer this strike goes on, the less content there is. So Disney's kind of stuck putting that out there. And they've come out and said, well, we're not going to have blasters. And it's not really a time of war. So it's not even Star Wars. I don't know what it is. Star minor conflicts. I don't know. But they're going to have their job. It's a big job. It's a big job to fix this. It's impressive how poorly it's been handled. Kathleen Kennedy should have gone a very long time ago. So at this point, I think we are beating a dead horse. It's just we can't believe that the horse is still out there on the track. But Lauren, let me say this: you know, there are many times that people have said Kathleen Kennedy's leaving. She's gone. She'll leave next week. She'll leave next month. Here we are. We're joining that now, right? I sort of can't believe it that we're actually doing this. But if this doesn't come to pass, now let's say we've heard that it could happen as early as October. Now, in all fairness, we don't know what's going to happen with the strike, and we don't know what's going to happen with the award shows based on the strike. So, folks out there, give us a little bit of leeway, okay? If this goes until, let's say, the end of January and there's no announcement, we'll make a video and we'll say, hey, we got this one wrong. We felt pretty confident, pretty secure. We were out on a limb a little bit, but we got it wrong. We're going to make that promise to you, okay? We're not here to throw out rampant speculation and rumor and never come back to it when it doesn't come true. So we're going to give ourselves until the end of January. We think it could happen as early as October. And if it doesn't happen by the end of January and we make that video and say, all right, well, this one didn't come to pass. If she quits on the first day of February thereafter, we'll know she's watching this channel. Lauren, tell us where we can find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there.
You can find me at Lauren Connor on X. You can find me on Lauren Connor 9030 at YouTube. I write articles for that park place. And you can find me in the chat on Valiant Renegade streams on most Sundays.
And folks, you can find Lauren Connor on this channel. We love having Lauren on. We know that when he's part of this, you all get excited, and I understand why. A wealth of knowledge and wisdom. Lauren, thank you again. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. All right, it's time. And this is a humdinger of a video, right? Because here we are. We're joining that chorus and saying, KK's gonna be gone. We finally did it. All right, drop down in the comments. Are we crazy for doing this? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Or are you just filled with utter apathy and say, I've heard this for so long, I can't stand any more of it. I want her to be out, and then we'll cover it. Folks, let us know. We know everybody has different opinions. And wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.